documents that were provided to the director and board members for the industry. We felt that it was important to have a discussion and ask some questions to make sure that the director and her staff were following the board to several agencies. The questions were satisfied. The board has determined that the director and enforcement did act quickly. There's concerns about the interaction with the federal government in general, but we did not find that or enforcement outside what is our offer it. I think all of us, including enforcement personnel, being a part of this. It's in terms of federal government. All of us are here, including me as a police person, even America. We're all here, actually, in have some trouble with that. But in that sense, if we accept that as the spirit of our participation, then it's known that while we might disagree about legislation, our enforcement people are they're actually helping to integrate, successfully integrate your business and I would encourage you to really collect the facts before you insinuate that something's been done correctly or
staff. I think that's not appropriate. And you're kind of beating up on the very people that are hoping that you'll be successful. I think it's appropriate to ask a question every now and then, what are we doing? But to come out and clearly just state something that isn't supported by fact, I think is not helpful. And so I just like to offer that out.
Thanks, Mr. Eierfeld. Yeah, we have determined that essentially any contact that occurred with the FAA was initiated by enforcement in the process of development of the NOV that we received, and that post that there was no contact. That the neither the director nor enforcement took the view that, well, the board wasn't tough enough on that, and we're going to do this. That is not the case. That is not what happened, and the insinuation that it was just is not entertained. And I would note for everybody that 1738.010, the purposes and findings of the regulation of marijuana, Section D, is the first part of the proposition, says that nothing in this act proposes or intends to require any individual or entity to engage in any conduct that violates federal law or exempt any individual or entity from any requirement of federal law or pose any obstacle to federal enforcement of federal law. That's what people voted on. That's what was put on the ballot. So that's, that's the statute that we're following. But the bottom line is that there was no untoward contact. The individual that is being spoken about, the federal action is a revocation of his airman certificate for distributing marijuana, a law of the United States punishable related to controlled substance punishable by imprisonment for more than 1 year, period. The other language in there, the death penalty language, was the A to Z encompassing language that would be in any, if you were caught carrying an unlicensed automatic weapon in your airplane, the same language would be in there when they went to revoke your license. Okay, that A to Z language would be in there. So anyways, that is that. Okay, we are going to move on to enforcement, tab 7, item D, Absolutely Chronic Delivery Company. Chief Holscher, are you still with us?
The conference is no longer in listen-only mode.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Okay, we're on tab 7 there, James. Do you want to take this up, or does
let me begin, and
thank you.
Chief Holscher is available as well. So, Absolutely Chronic Delivery Company is a marijuana delivery company that has been in existence for certainly at least 3, if not, I think probably more, like 4 or 5 years. And their business model is, what they claim is that they provide free marijuana in exchange for a donation and a delivery fee. There's a history of this company that's provided in a memo from Investigator Hamilton. They've been in, so he says they've been in operation since November of 2014. In 2015, Michael Kreitz, who's the original owner of ACDC, was charged with 5 counts of misconduct involving a controlled substance in the 3rd degree, which is a Class C felony. I've provided you with the CourtView records, which are not easy to see in the attachment, and I apologize, there wasn't any way I could make that any better. But as you can see, the case against Mr. Kreitz has been dragging on for 3 years and continues to drag on. Currently, Absolutely Chronic Delivery Company, LLC, is registered, non-compliant, but registered with the Division of Corporations, Business, and Professional Licensing, being owned by Grant Mehmet, Anthony Bradford, and Jeffrey Toole. There's a current business license for ACDC owned by Sierra Kreitz and Zachary Kreitz. Sierra Kreitz is the 19-year-old daughter of Michael Kreitz, and Zachary Kreitz is the 16-year-old son of Michael Kreitz. The theory that this is a delivery company that works off of donations doesn't really hold up to our experience with ACDC. We have done several purchases from them using a confidential informant, and as you can see in Investigator Bankowski's memo, when the informant was given a list of strains that were available and picked a strain, they were told what the price was for that strain. Even when a lesser amount of money is accepted, marijuana is being exchanged for money, which is a common understanding of the sale of marijuana. And I think you all recognize the board has heard in the past many comments from industry members requesting enforcement against this illegal, what is essentially an illegal retailer. This past summer, ACDC upped their presence, particularly in Anchorage, by having a truck driving around with a sign advertising their business. In addition, we have had several anecdotal comments that ACDC drivers would sit in the parking lots of retail stores and accost customers going into those retail stores to offer them an alternative. There were undercover buys done by the Anchorage Police Department towards the end of 2017, and as I mentioned, AMCO has initiated some undercover buys. Of those buys, we were able to identify 3 individuals who worked for ACDC selling marijuana, and so I am requesting that the board consider 4 civil penalties. One is a $10,000 fine on each of the, or $10,000 fines on each of the 3 drivers that we were able to identify from undercover buys: Zonaida Rodriguez, Stephen Timblin, and Benjamin Lawson. The 4th is a $300,000 fine on Absolutely Chronic Delivery Company, LLC, the LLC that is owned by Grant Memmott, Anthony Bradford, and Jeffrey Toole for selling marijuana without a license. I also request that the board revoke the handler permit issued to Anthony Bradford, number 11980, in accordance with 3 AAC 306-812 for selling marijuana without a license. We had letters couriered to these 6 individuals on Friday. I recognize that was rather late, but prepping for these meetings takes an enormous amount of time. So we did have letters couriered to these 6 individuals. I received an email back from Mr. Bradford, which I will pass out to the board. Mr. Bradford claims that he is no longer involved with ACDC LLC and that he was given misinformation to encourage his participation at the beginning and then was fired. So the board can determine, can read this. I also had a phone call from Mr. Timblin, although I've not been able to call him back, but his question to me was, how did you get my name? Mr. Bradford also mentions that it would be his preference that the board address this in December in Anchorage because all of our undercover buys occurred in Anchorage. So that is something else for you to consider. I'm going to turn it over to Chief Holscher if he has anything to add while I pass out this email.
Okay, go ahead there, James.
I just want to confirm that we received emails from the courier service saying that all letters were delivered.
Okay, noted.
And I don't have anything further to add to this other than this was done at the request of the board, and this was a huge enforcement deal with some of the aspects of these delivery services acting as a licensee, imitating a base license type when there is no license type for delivery, but selling marijuana as a business, as a company with that model. We're going to sell marijuana for quote-unquote donations. But as you can see from the reports written by the investigators, there is definitely detailed exact amounts of what's due. These are sales. They are not delivery donations. They are sales for the marijuana. Unless you have anything to ask me, I would also say that Investigator Bankowski and Investigator Hamilton are also on the phone, and they can answer any questions particular to their report.
Okay, just quick question for the director. Can we delay this whole item until December?
Of course.
Okay, because we are pretty far behind, and this deserves more time than I think we're going to be able to give it. So I'll entertain a motion to table the request for civil fine to ACDC to the December meeting.
So motion.
Okay, is there a second? Second. I'll give it to Mr. Miller. Okay, any discussion?
Yeah, I want to say congratulations to enforcement staff. These people have been a thorn in the side of the legitimate marijuana industry for a long time now, and it looks like we might actually be able to get them. So, thanks, guys.
And APD also. Okay, so we'll have this on the agenda in December. So all those in favor of tabling or postponing, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're good to go on that. Thank you, James. I think we're done with you guys for the day.
Thank you.
All right, moving right along, tab 24. We're going to move into applications from previous meetings. These shall go fairly quickly. Yes? Okay. Yeah, tab 24. SUILNUA. Requesting extension of the abeyance period. I see we're joined at the front table by counsel for...
counsel for, I always say it wrong too, Saluna, something like that.
Okay, yeah, and this will see America.
The conference is now in listen-only mode.
This application was approved with delegation, then rescinded. Once we got the protest, the approval was rescinded and reapproved, denied with 120-day abeyance at the June 2018 meeting. The applicant has indicated that they are going to be unable to meet that 120-day deadline for a variety of reasons and are requesting an extension of the abeyance period until January 31st, 2019, which I recommend the board approve.
You recommend approval. Okay, so just real quick, what's going on?
I think Ms. McConnell covered everything. Basically, we're going through the CUP process, and in the borough, they had that hacking, and it kind of delayed a lot of things, so.
Okay, is there a motion to extend or to rescind the previous abeyance and obey them until January 31st, 2019?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I move to rescind the 120-day abeyance and defer until January 31st.
Motion by Mr. Ankerveld, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Emmett. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes, and you're obeyed.
Thank you.
You're welcome. This will leave my mark. Next one is North Star Fire License 13479. And so what's
The reason this is on the applications from previous meetings, this was a situation where there had been a local government lack of notice, and so the board had thoroughly reviewed this and I think addressed issues, and then it turned out they hadn't properly done their notice, so you made them go back and redo their notice. So we put it on here to indicate to you that you don't need to re-go through the operating plan and those sorts of things because you've already done that.
okay, so go ahead.
Dana Levine, attorney for North Star Fire, and Kirsten Hagan is on the line if you wanted to talk to her, but basically this was kind of on the border of Fairbanks, North Star Borough, and Fairbanks City, and we notified Fairbanks North Star Borough and not the city, so we had to go back and renotice the city and run the newspaper ad and do all those.
Okay, so there's currently no objections from anybody on this now.
Protest for lack of certificate of occupancy because they haven't finished building it out.
Okay, and that can be.
So that would be an uphold with 120-day abeyance.
Okay, all right. Okay, and we did go over this application. Okay, is there a motion on North Star Fire?
I'll turn my mic on first to be the first to admit I'm not sure what we need to do here. What particular action are we doing?
I think
because there's been a protest, you are required, you can either determine the protest is arbitrary, capricious, and unreasonable, or you're required to uphold the protest. But because it's the type of protest that is only, they have to do something and then we'll lift it, what we do is we generally give them an abeyance period. So the motion would be to uphold the protest and deny the license with a 120-day abeyance period. So
Repeat after me. I move to uphold the protest and establish an abeyance for 120 days.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Emmett. Any more discussion on this one? Okay, so North Star Fire License 13479. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. They've got their abeyance. Okay, next is 50 Shades of Green. And this is a delegated license and protest from the city of Houston for city code.
Mr. Chair, so this license was approved at the last meeting. It's currently in delegated status, and we did get a protest from the city of Houston for not meeting a city setback/buffer requirement and for potential noncompliance with the required separation distance from a church, which is on the neighboring lot. We received several public objections to the issuance of this license, and there's one issue, which is the applicant is asserting that because her application was submitted prior to the regulations change that altered when the public objection period happens, that those objections should not be valid because she initiated her application back when the objection period was relating to when you published the public notice, and these objections did not come in during that time. The other issue is, thank you, the objections assert that the facility is too close to a church, which would violate 3 AAC 306-010A. Investigator Whiteman visited the site and did determine that the shortest pedestrian route between the public entrance to the proposed licensed premises and the main public entrance to the church is less than 500 feet. Comments have also been received that assert that the church building should not qualify as a church in that religious services have not been regularly conducted at that neighboring building. So there's a bunch of sort of battling comments of people claiming one thing and other people claiming the opposite. So those are provided for you in your packets.
Ms. Waltine.
Jan Waltine, attorney for 50 Shades of Green. The licensee hired me after receiving a letter from the director saying, your license has been protested. So I think there's two issues here. One is the public notice period and the protest regulation change, and the second is whether or not the church was actually in use at the time that this application's been processed and actually after it had been approved by you and in delegated status. So just addressing first the retroactivity. Well, it certainly makes sense to apply regulatory changes prospectively. To apply them retroactively, case law is pretty clear that you need to actually say that it has retroactive implication. Like you did earlier today on that form MJ04, you did the retroactive explicitly. And that's how you do it for it to hold up in court. So what you have in front of you on top of the binder is a letter that, from me, that explains the case law on retroactivity for administrative law regulations. So the criteria applicable to determining whether to apply a new rule of law prospectively or retroactively in the civil context are whether the holding either overrules a prior law or decides the issue of first impression whose resolution was not foreshadowed, whether purpose and intent of the effect of the new rule of law is best accomplished by retroactivity implication versus prospective application. And this comes from the State of Alaska Supreme Court case of commercial fisheries entry versus, and a word I can't say, but Bayuk, and that was in 1984. So in general, retroactivity, even when it's stated by a statute is permissible, it's not favored except upon the clearest of statutory mandate. And that came from another Supreme Court case for the State Supreme Court of Alaska in 2008. The Supreme Court and the United Supreme Court has explicitly made it clear there has to be an unequivocal mandate that allows for the retroactivity in order for an administrative agency to attempt to apply the new regulations retroactively, meaning that, and as you can see, Erica correctly noted in her board memo, you did not discuss whether or not this new regulation had an impact on licenses that were already in process, right? So in this case, 50 Shades of Green went through the application process, did the 30 days under the regular public notice rules that were changed later on, and then a few days after you delegated the license, had protests from a church that has, arguably been vacant for about 2 years and was on the market, and we can talk about that when we go through the binder, now saying that it's a church and they're going to protest it. So this person has been going through their licensing process for how many months now? 13 months, and just now, after the Fairbanks meeting, now protests and comments have been raised. Do you have any questions about the retroactive piece of this license issue? So to say it in English,
In section 2 of your binder.
To say it in English, if you want a regulation to have retroactive effect, you have to say that. That has to be part of your debate. It has to be part of your motion. It has to give notice to the public that this has retroactive effect. You can't just a year later change the rules and then apply it to somebody that had already gone through the process. because it negatively impacts somebody without notice. So that's my understanding of the law for retroactivity. Harriet might have a different understanding, but that's for the retroactivity portion of it. You know, the protest period, in my understanding, has already run because she was under the old public notice laws.
Mr. Chair. Yes, sir. I don't have any problem with your legal analysis, I guess. And we could, I guess, ignore the objections from everybody but the city of Houston. But my question to you is, even if we were to say, I'm not sure, if you're protesting that the city of Houston is late, and we could say they were late, but does the city of Houston have the right to deny this business to open, even if we say they can open?
Yes, they will, because they will have the opportunity, because she has to get a variance for the setbacks that you see. She's about 9 feet too close to a neighbor.
Right. Okay. So that, I mean, you're spending an awful lot of legal analysis on something that's, in my mind, pretty immaterial to the fact of whether she can open or not, irrespective of what we do.
Sometimes you got to cross a puddle to get to the lake.
If I could clarify that the regulatory change did not change the protest period, so the city of Houston did protest in a timely manner.
So there's a difference then between the objections that the public might make versus what the city of Houston does.
That's correct.
And so unless we determine that city of Houston's arbitrary, we have to uphold their protest, irrespective of whatever this analysis says.
I agree, and I think you made a good point, and I'm just saying the protest, there's no dispute that the protest was timely filed.
Okay, so the only dispute is over the objections.
Correct.
Okay.
Through the chair to Jana. So this these documents you have in here, these are current, right? I mean, like section 3.
Oh, that was the listing. So what happened was this church was originally run by a different pastor that passed away. Yeah, maybe you could tell the story better, Lainey, because you know the story in and out.
Right. Yeah, go ahead and identify yourself.
My name is Gabrielle Peterson, and I'm the owner of 50 Shades of Green, and the property next door to what they're calling is the church now, which was a vacant property. I've owned that property for 13 years, and it used to be a church. I'm not going to tell you it wasn't. It was titled to a church.
Just to specify, sorry, you own the property that you were at for 13 years that's neighbored this vacant building.
Yes, that's next door to it. In 2014, their pastor passed away, and the church was vacant. They quitclaim deeded it on September 15th of 2015 to this pastor that owns a church in Big Lake, the Independent Baptist Church of Big Lake. He basically, 4 months after it was quitclaim deeded to him in his name, he put the property up for sale. It was for sale for 18 months. During this time, my business partner and I actually put in an offer of this property. You'll see in the section 3 here, it shows the MLS listing that the property was vacant, it was up for sale. We were approved by them, accepted, we put down the earnest money.
You'll find that in section 3C, the records of Lainey and her partner trying to negotiate with the owner of the building to try to buy it.
Right. There's a document in here between the real estate agent, the pastor, and my business partner in here of a transaction by transaction. It's pretty detailed. If I can just go through this binder, but here, let me go right here. So in section 3, you'll see this is for sale sign right there of the property. That is listed, that is sitting on that property, which is adjacent next door to my property. And then in tab B of section 3, you'll see is the MLS listing showing right here. You'll see some highlighted areas on here showing that the property is actually vacant at the time. It shows you on this document that the date of the listing was April 12th of 2016, and it expired in July. But actually, it didn't expire. They just took the sign down because it was September when we initiated our application with the board and everything that we went through and put in an offer on this property. They accepted it. Our financing actually fell through on that at the time, so we weren't able to actually purchase the property. It stayed vacant up until until we were approved by the board. But I can show you all that here too. So you'll see in here, we'll go to the next section here, which is 4. well, you'll see in section 4, this was a document presented to the City Council of Houston by the City Council member on behalf of the church on September 5th of 2018. That was their first service that they had there. If you look at that, you can see it's clear. They show a newspaper article of a service happening on September 12th of 2018. The first protest letter came in against me on August 22nd, which was, 6 days after we were approved to the board from you guys in Fairbanks. He is a member of the Big Lake Church in Big Lake. He filed a letter saying that they'd had services at that property for the last 2 years, saying that they have youth group services, they have missionary people stay there. None of that is correct. Not only were they not a church, but they don't have a business license to do business in the city, the state, or the borough. And I know they're a nonprofit, but they're not a 501(c)(3). They're a nonprofit constitutional church, they say. And so they don't have to have a business license, so they're a corporation, but their corporation with the state of Alaska is a non-compliant status. So they are not even a licensed entity to do anything in the state of Alaska, let alone to be a church. But
And the definition of church is just any, religious group that gets together and holds services regularly.
right.
And you'll see in some of the letters sent in, especially one by the Community Action Police person, I forget her name, Christine, and I think she's actually on the phone if you wanted to speak with her. She's been patrolling that area for years and years and years, and she indicated in her letter that the past 2 years that building is sat vacant, and so my client has invested up towards of how much? $205,000 into remodeling her current existing property that she's owned for 13 years. So it's kind of an unfortunate situation, and we'll leave it in your capable hands. And if you have questions, we're here to answer those too.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think what we've got to do here is determine whether or not this place is really a church. It is, regardless of how I feel about that particular reg, we've got a duty to enforce that. But if these individuals are just claiming that it's a church and they haven't been holding regular services there, it's hard to say it a church just because they call it one. Like here it says, it says in this document that the building is vacant. There's multiple places in this packet where it says the septic doesn't work. The well is undocumented and not hooked up. It means it's non-potable water. It would have to be tested. I've got some religious relatives. I don't know if they would just drop their kids off there saying, "Oh, this is a church. Go to town." So I think that the people who are claiming this is a church would have to come and make a very, very good case that it actually is for us to grant a license to 50 Shades of Green.
Well, and it might be now, but if you turn to tab 8, there's a transcript of the conversation my client and her team had with the pastor, and if you turn to page...
I think it was line 220.
Yeah. So if you look at the right-sided column, you see these little numbers, and if you go to line 260, Mr. Paul Moyer, who's one of the objectors, hold on 1 second. Well, when my client was talking about cobwebs on the walls and blah, 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 he responds, when they review it, they're not going to know that it was ever a church here when clearly you step out in front and see there's a cross and a sign, which basically says they're not going to know it's not a church because it has a cross on it. And it goes through and says,
Person's in the bureaucracy who's going to review the application. Unless they come here, they're not going to know that it's a vacant church.
Right.
But they have I said, but they do come here, and he laughed at me, and he said, when they review it, they're not going to know it was ever a church here, when clearly you can step out front and see there's a cross. And you can see the boards on the windows, we said. And there's no septic or sewer. And he said, it just goes on and on. It's all highlighted for you.
So he basically says, hey, this thing's got a cross on it, so it looks like a church, and no one's going to know it's not a vacant church. And it might not be vacant now. Maybe they've started. But for the past 2 years and up to the date after you issued this license, it has been a vacant church.
We actually took the offer here.
Yeah, I guess the question is, at the time you made your original application, were worship services being held in there? Was the
No,
building,
it was for
building,
sale.
was the church building boarded up at that time? So I believe that there's a grandfather clause in here that if you have a license and then somebody builds a church next door to you afterwards, it is a curious question here.
So the language is that if the church, if the marijuana facility is there before the church has services, then that marijuana facility is grandfathered in. But if that marijuana facility ever becomes defunct for any reason, fails to uphold their, then they can't come back in.
Yeah, no, that's correct. Go ahead.
I'm pretty familiar with this area. I drive the highways a lot, and I can tell you that this building has been overgrown and pretty trashed for the last several years. It's actually pretty decent now. They've cleaning it up, and
We're always happy to inspire more development.
and I agree that if someone wants to open a church next to a marijuana facility, that's fine, as long as the marijuana facility started and prior to that church being open. And I wish them the best hope. But this building was vacant for at least 2 or 3 years that I can being out in that area. I don't support someone opening church up or anything else with this trying to get open, basically force them to not have their business.
And on that note, that was a tactic we saw a lot in Arizona where people would pay people to set up churches. Not that that's happening here. I don't think that that's happening here, but it's frowned upon because it's not very fair.
Okay, so where exactly does this leave us?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So if you look at page 4 of the tab, there's 3 elements of the tab that's of tab 26 on the computer. There's 3 elements to the protest, and the third one being that the City of Houston requests that the board investigate compliance with 3 AC 306-010. So it sounds to me, not all of you have spoken, it sounds to me like you are satisfied that there is not a violation of 306-010. So you can kind of strike off number 3. But there's still the issues of number 1 and number 2. This is certainly a potentially resolvable issue. So should you not, unless you determine numbers 1 and 2 to be arbitrary, capricious, and unreasonable, this would be a situation where you would rescind your prior approval, uphold the protest, and deny the license with a period of time in order to resolve this issue. That would be consistent with other actions.
Okay, to resolve 1 and 2.
1 and 2.
The variance of the second.
1 and 2 are actually one and the same, and a variance application has been submitted for both elements and is in process now. Again, it's going to be up to the City of Houston to grant those. So again, we're still, jumping over this puddle to get to that lake.
Right. The application that I applied for the variance, which I did last September, actually, the City of Houston had lost it. They couldn't locate it or find it. I had to go back through their city council records from a year ago. It was on the recording. I had to show that to them. But they're now again, processing the variance that we applied for. Also, the neighbor that the variance is adjacent to, it's a 9-foot distance between my structure and the property line. There's a letter attached to this application saying that he has no issue with the variance at all. He doesn't object to what we're doing in any way. And I received an email from them today that the variance is in process and they're working on it.
But it will still be up to the City of Houston on whether or not to grant it. It's not up to the neighbor.
Right.
Okay. Then I will ask, gentlemen, what's your pleasure?
So again, the motion would, well, you kind of need to do two things. So you need to rescind your approval of August 2018. That would be one motion. And then your second motion would be to uphold the element of the protest that requires a variance to city code and with a 120-day abeyance. I mean, if that, you can discuss the time period with the applicant.
I see some head nods. So motioned.
Okay, and the motion is to, whatever the director said.
Yeah.
Well, we keep doing this, Harriet's gonna have some words for us. All right, everybody understands the motion? Okay, there was a second? Second. Seconded by Mr. Miller. Is there any discussion? Okay, well, let's do a roll call on this one. Mr. Ankerveld?
Yes.
Mr. Emmett?
Yes.
Mr. Miller? Yes. Mr. Jones?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so there you go. Just a brief public service announcement in case you haven't heard. We have a new lieutenant governor. Byron Malott resigned over inappropriate comments that were detailed, and HHS Commissioner Valerie Davidson from my current hometown of Bethel is now the lieutenant governor of Alaska. Valerie Davidson. Okay, and on that note, we are moving on to 420 on Main LLC. Is okay, 420 on Main. Let me get this thing opened up here.
The conference is no longer in listen-only mode.
Hello? Hello?
Is 420 on Main?
Hello?
Yes,
420
hello.
on Main?
Okay, just 1 second. I'm trying to get my computer to work.
We're into panic mode.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do here. Is there a 15-year-old in the house? Can't get this doggone tab to open up. Let me just close it out. Go ahead. Go ahead and identify yourself.
Robert Borrance,
Okay.
420 on Main, LLC, Homer, Alaska. I'm the sole owner and
Okay,
manager
okay,
developer of the company.
I get this damn thing. There we go. Okay. It's approved the delegation in August. Required the MJ double lot. So, conditions recommended by the City of Homer all regard compliance. And so, this is just another, looks like simple one. What was, so the City of Homer wants some lights, complied signs, and you gotta get a zoning permit. How are you coming on those things?
The lights and the signage is well described in their regulations, and as we do not have signs up as yet, we do know and will comply with those without any problem. I work very closely with Rick there at the city.
Okay, very good.
So that's not going to be a problem at all.
All right. Director,
The zoning?
beyond what's in your memo here?
No.
Okay, so we'll be looking for a motion to rescind, right? Rescind the previous approval and approve the license with the City of Homer recommended conditions and with delegation to include the requirement that the MJ double lot be revised to only show what licenses the applicant currently has ownership in.
So motioned.
Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Mr. Miller. Is there any discussion?
I have a couple
Sure,
of questions.
go ahead.
The signage regulation, did you guys review it against the regulations to make sure that it's for the 400 square inches and has to be attached to the building?
Go ahead with the question.
City of Homer's sign regulations, certainly the applicant would have to meet both.
They realize, right, that you have to meet both regulations, not just the Homer regulation?
Are you talking to me, sir?
Yes.
Yes, I understand there's the city regulations, then there's the marijuana board regulations. Same holds true for advertising and those issues. And we don't see any problem complying with those. We're not engaged in signage right now because we're in the development phase. Once we have licenses, we will finish the build out and request your review at that time, and we should have everything in place.
All right, thank you. Okay, very good. Any other questions, discussion? Okay, motion on the floor. All those in favor of the motion to rescind previous approval of delegation and approve the license with City of Homer recommended conditions and the delegation to include requirements that the MJ double lot be revised to show only what licenses the applicant has current ownership in. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? So that motion passes. Thank you very much. Go ahead and kill the phone off. We've been enjoying
Thank you very much.
The conference is now in listen-only mode.
Say a few words to us. We'd be happy to hear from you.
Just like Juno. Senator Peter Majicki, District O, pleasure to be here today. I appreciate you meeting in our beautiful community. Thanks for being here. I just left having a Louis burger, so their jalapeno burgers are the best in the world if you're in the neighborhood. But I shouldn't be plugging businesses. I'm here to just make a few comments. You know, our industry in this state, and you may not know this, but I was not in support of the legalization, but it passed. And when it passed, it became my job in the legislature to have clear, transparent, and effective statutes that you all have changed into regulations, but our industry is still in its infancy. I do some research with other states, learning from some of their successes and shortcomings. I'm sure you all do the same. And I'm going to be careful not to talk about any of the issues that are before you. But I guess what I'm here to say is I understand that just like my job, often yours is thankless. It's a tough job, yours and the directors. I know that the boards are somewhat overstressed with the combination of responsibilities, but what I do want to say is that because of the legalization, we have countless Alaskans that are investing heavily in a new industry that don't always feel that the expectations are clear. I just suggest additional work on application, clarification, and guidance whenever possible. When you think about someone investing their life savings in an industry in Alaska, to me, it doesn't matter if it's a cannabis investment or it's a new barber shop. I think there are some gaps that I know you're working on. Again, we're kind of brand new here, but I just suggest that you reach out whenever possible to those that are entering the business that probably have the clearest view of some of the areas where they're confused sometimes, where they feel like there could be additional fairness injected into the process. And hopefully the end result is that we have a clear and transparent process that's safe and fair to everyone that wants to become involved in the industry, yet still protects the public safety and of all Alaskans. So what I wanted to wrap up with finally, and unless you have any questions for me, is I'm here for legislative issues that you may see that we're facing, whether it's finance related. I know that you have some challenges on staffing, or event permits, more flexibility of transportation, some of the other issues that you're all facing. So I wanted to thank you for what you're doing. I wanted to thank you for being here. Wanted to be the voice of constituents in my district that are somewhat struggling with some of the regulations and application process. And again, hopefully we come out on the other side with a system that is relatively easy to follow for those choosing to invest in the cannabis industry.
Great. Thank you, Senator. We sure appreciate your coming down. We've had a couple of legislative laundry lists that we've sent since our first meeting. One thing that particularly concerns me is the need for a legislative fix in two areas. Expanding the definition of local government to include not unincorporated areas, but tribal governments. They're just not in there. So if somebody wanted to start an establishment in a community that has only a tribal government, not a municipality, the tribal government wouldn't have the ability to protest. And the other thing is, I'm really, and I hope this concern is shared both by my fellow board members and by the industry and by the legislature, at kind of the lack of diversity in the ownership of the industry, and particularly in rural Alaska. And one of the constraints there is that because in our definition, a corporation that receives a license, all of their shareholders have to be Alaska residents. And I think it's probably a safe dollar bet to say that there's not a single native corporation in the state, regional or village, that can say with a straight face that their shareholders are Alaska. And that concerns me, and I think that that's something that could be addressed, again, legislatively, either through exempting ANCs from that requirement or allowing ANCs to create subsidiaries that would be, devised with shareholder residents of Alaska as the shareholders, and allow them to start businesses. And the same goes with the tribal government. If a tribal government wanted to form a business, a marijuana business, a lot of them can't say all of our members, who you might infer as shareholders, are Alaska residents. So that's one thing that I'm concerned about, that will probably rise to the, and some of that has been in some of our requests to the legislature in the past. So I know that you're interested in seeing a successful industry, and I hope that we can see some more diversity in the makeup of the industry, and I hope you and your fellow legislature share that interest, because we want the industry to last.
Well, thank you for that. I think it's a two-way street with the legislature. I think there's a lack of knowledge and education on the industry there as well. So my door is certainly open to helping to smooth the way, bring some of them along on some of these improvements that I agree are necessary. So when you're through, if you have some ideas, you can pass on through the director. After the election, of course, we have these things called elections, and after that's over with, we're happy to help bring that communication back to the legislature.
Yeah, I sure appreciate that. Maybe you can talk to Carrie about doing a lunch and learn. Senator Joe.
Mr. Chair. Thank you for coming and speaking to us, Senator. As Chair Springer stated, we've sent a laundry list to the legislature every year. Something that keeps coming up in discussion is the issue of taxes. I know that that's something that the industry is very concerned about. It consumes a lot of our time in discussion when it comes to policy. It's a discussion that this board has wrestled with and has not come to anything definitive other than an ask to the legislature to address taxes. And my question for you is do you feel that there is appetite within the Senate, either from your office or from offices of senators who you speak with, that might be willing to address said tax discussion after the election?
That's a fair question, and I've been to several local meetings with our local group. They've been broadcast statewide. I think I already expressed that I'm not satisfied with the current tax structure. I don't think it works. I think it's problematic. I have a little bit of a bridge to cross on bringing anti-cannabis legislators to realize that it passed by a vote of the people, and our job is to facilitate a fully functioning industry. Some are going to hold out and oppose it. But I do believe there's an adequate proportion of legislators that, since it's legal, are going to make it work. And they will recognize that the current tax structure is problematic. So I believe so. I believe we could get there. That's one of the primary issues. Again, I was going to be careful about not speaking about specific issues today, but there are clearly gaps, and some of those gaps will encourage the black market because we start making the margin going in the wrong direction, and suddenly people are willing to call the guy down the corner instead of the woman in the legal establishment. That's my primary reason for wanting to move forward with those improvements. So I believe so. I believe with the right logic so that they understand that they will be discouraging black market sales, that you could get even the most anti-legislators on the same page.
Thank you.
All right, Senator, we sure appreciate you coming by and spending some time with us, and maybe we'll see you down in Juneau in a few months.
Thank you. Thank you all for your service.
Maybe when we have a meeting, not maybe we'll see you in Juneau.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to have to whip here. What does Oprah say? You get a car, you get a car, you get a car.
A car?
You want a license more than a car? Okay, this brings us to the login screen again. I hate this thing. Okay, we are on tabled licenses, tab 28, Green Store Connection. Okay, going to open the phone lines up, I guess.
The conference is no longer in listen-only mode.
Let me go ahead and run Green Store Connection, Bias Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At your last meeting in August, the board tabled this application because the applicant was not present either in person or telephonically. Subsequently, the Mat-Su Borough submitted a protest, but it was not received within the 60-day period required by the regulations, and so the board is not allowed to consider it as a protest. However, the protest was because they had not, the applicant has not yet obtained a conditional use permit, and AAC 306-300A2B states that a person seeking a retail marijuana store license must demonstrate to the board's satisfaction that the applicant will operate in compliance with each applicable public health, fire, safety, and tax code and ordinance of the state and the local government in which the applicant's proposed licensed premises are located. So should the applicant be present to answer questions and satisfy the board's any concerns the board may have about the license, I would recommend that the board approve this license with delegation to include the requirement that the applicant obtain the required conditional use permit from the Matanuska-Susitna Borough.
Okay, is anybody from Green Store Connection online?
Hi, it's Elizabeth Truitt, the proprietor.
All right, we got you. Go ahead. All right, so you don't have your conditional use permit yet?
No, I actually submitted it several months ago, but it's not complete. Mark and I are working together on that, and we're just kind of moving forward. There was a stumbling block that came up with my convenience store, and believe it or not, the location of my gas pump. So, because it's on a 5-acre lot, and the gas pump is in the right-of-way, it's been there for 45 years, and so we're just working through that process right now to see how we can get through that conditional use application.
Okay, let me ask you this. If we were to postpone this, because it's a full application here that we haven't reviewed it. Would it be off-putting to you to wait until December? This is not gonna, give you any problems getting your conditional use permit. It looks like your building is already there, right?
Yeah. So I'll just give you just kind of a little bit of the history about myself. So I got an email, I guess, first part of September, and one of the board members had a question of what the Green Store was. So the Green Store is a convenience store out in the Butte, outside of Palmer, and it's been there for 45 plus years. I've owned it and operated it for 8 years this past summer. The Green Store connection is at the opposite end of the 5-acre lot. And to answer your question, it would not be an issue for me at all to postpone things until December. That gives me a little bit more time to work with Mark in regards to my gas pump.
Okay, well, I really appreciate that. We are actually quite behind on the meeting right now, and we want to give you a fair hearing on the application. So is there a motion to...
Do you guys have any questions at all right now?
I don't have any. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, is there a motion to postpone until December?
So motion.
Okay, there's a second? Second. Okay, second by Mr. Miller. So you will be on the agenda in December, Mr. Pruitt, and I appreciate your forbearance with us.
Okay, sounds great. I'll touch base with you guys in a couple months.
You bet.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay,
Mr. Chair,
yes.
you didn't call for a vote.
Sure, you're right. All those in favor of postponing until December, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, Alaskan Pharmacy with an F. Are they here?
Yes.
Okay. All right. This is a new license application. Let's see. We tried to do this back in June and August. Was that?
Yes, that's correct. I was working out in the bush, unable to attend or phone in. I just let you know ahead of time I'm withdrawing my application. I no longer want to be involved in the business.
Oh, so you're withdrawing your application?
I am. Yeah, I'm probably the first one to ever do that, but this goes against my conscience, and I can't do the business myself.
Okay. Well, you just send a note to the office, and they'll take care of it. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Elliott.
Sure. If you could do me a favor, though, if you could show that you could say application withdrawn, not incomplete or denied or anything, I'd appreciate that.
Well, it was complete. That's why it's on our agenda. So
yeah, absolutely.
We'll just have it showed as withdrawn. You bet. Okay.
Right.
Well, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bless you all. Have a good day.
Yep. Bye.
Mr. Chair, before you begin tabs
Yes,
30 and 31, I have realized that in preparation for this meeting, I did neglected to notify these licensees of being on the agenda for this reason. So considering our timeliness, perhaps it would just be better that these 30 and 31 be pushed to December, along with any licenses at that time.
Okay, well, let me just ask really fast though, because all this is just see what's going on.
I would ask if.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm just going to see if they're here. Yeah. Is the Naked Herbalist on the line? Francis Willow. Don't see them. Okay. Joe Young out in Toke. Are you online? Okay. Then the next one would be the Penrods, a.k.a. Hardworking Cities. Are you online?
Yeah.
Okay.
What just happened?
What have you?
What's
The
that?
guy
What
went
just
through his application.
Okay,
Why?
we're looking for
It was
hardworking cities.
against his conscience.
Yeah, 'cause moral?
Well, morally, I mean, who knows? It could be because
Oh, yeah,
maybe...
okay, your side discussion is audible. Can you mute your phone, please?
Yeah. Okay, we are looking for, Nathan or Preston Penrod. Okay, no sign of them. How about Brown Owls Cultivation in Fairbanks? Are you online? Okay, no sign of them. Matt Nuska's Finest from Wasilla. Are you online? Okay, they were all notified that...
No, they were not notified. That's my problem, is I neglected to notify them.
They're all at tab 31. I'm sorry, I kept thinking each one was a tab. Okay, I apologize. All right, okay. So let's move on to tab 32, which starts with Great Land Ganja. All right, you go ahead and turn the phone off.
The conference is now in listen-only mode.
Mr. Abel is Vice President of the Alaska Marijuana Industry Association. I'll leave it at your discretion whether I should recuse myself or not, but I just wanted to make that known.
Yeah, I don't see, this doesn't have anything to do with your particular business interests. No, I don't see any reason there's any issue for either one of you.
Okay, well then I will stay.
Okay, so this is request to retest a batch. Okay, Director, you got some comments on here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Mr. Abel did request to retest a harvest batch, which failed due to the detected presence of Aspergillus fumigatus. He provided a statement saying that, by summarizing it, I'm not trying to belittle his statement in any way, but I'm just trying to be faster, that his lab is kept clean and that he inspected the harvest batch under a microscope and didn't see any evidence of spores, and so feels that retesting it would no way infringe upon the health and safety. I have only sparingly approved retest requests because we're in a situation where you have a failed test, and if you retest it with, of course, a different sample and it passes, then you have a pass test, and so then you have one failed test and one pass test. Well, how do you know which of those tests is accurate? Aspergillus spores are not uniform throughout a harvest batch, so even a second pass test does not necessarily negate a first failed test. We do not have the benefit of some other states where there are a multitude of testing labs, so you can go to, 2 of 3 or 3 of 5 testing samples to get the preponderance of the tests. And I was given no reason to doubt that the first test lacked validity. So I did deny this request, and Mr. Abel is seeking board's permission. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Abel. Ms. Fortine?
Thank you. I'm just going to read the statement that I gave to you guys there for your own perusal. Esteemed members of the board, thank you for hearing me today. We are respectfully appealing Director McConnell's decision of 9/21/18 denying our request submitted 8/30/18 to retest harvest batch PE 81418L, veld microbials for Aspergillus. We are asking for a retest to gather more information, and because the harvest batch, upon close scrutiny, looks to be in great shape. We would like to know what multiple tests on this harvest batch would turn up. There seems to be no clear guideline or timeline as to what conditions are required for a retest to be allowed. It is troublesome that such a decision, bearing huge financial consequences to a business, can be made with no parameters or as a guide. Because these decisions could look random, what are the deciding factors? It puts the state in an uncomfortable position. What are the reasons for one company being granted retesting while another is not? A person might ask. Below find our original request for retesting, and I'll just read that really quickly. I'm writing today to request a retest of failed harvest batch PE 81418L. After a thorough inspection of our processes and a subsequent review of the product from the harvest batch, I can safely say I do not believe the sample submitted was representative of the harvest batch. The first reason I suggest this is that all other harvest batches from the exact same environment, strain, and from the same greenhouse were cleared for sale by the lab. The second reason I suggest that the harvest batch should be retested is that the product looks very clean upon visual inspection. Even under a 100-power scope with a bright light, we found nothing concerning. When broken apart or separated from the stem, the flowers still look spore-free. We even examined all of the trim grades. They look great, clear, clean, trichome profiles, and no spores. Given the fact that we have always passed harvest batch testing in the past, I would say our processes are proven, and if anything, we have improved our system, cleanliness, and attention to quality since our first day of operation. I know that you bear a great responsibility in making these decisions. The health and safety of the public is always our primary concern. I feel we would in no way infringe upon said health and safety by retesting harvest batch PE 81418L. So that was my initial request. Given the developmental stage of the industry here in Alaska, we believe retesting is a reasonable choice. It is very hard to say conclusively that the harvest batch itself contaminated and that the contamination did not come from elsewhere. A retest allows a double check of the findings. The state is not being asked to pay for it. You as the board have the right to grant this retest within the regulations. This appeal highlights an important problem within the regulatory framework. Our specific way of failing a harvest batch for microbial is not common in the industry nationwide. It puts the farmers at risk by pure chance. If we test agricultural food products this way, our food system would collapse. Most states regulate cannabis by setting threshold levels, not a black or white fail if present. Aspergillus can be found in most environments. It is really the quantity present as other contaminants with which we should be concerned. Testing our harvest batch will give us all more information. Thank you for your consideration in this manner.
Thanks, Mr. Abel. Let's get a couple of questions. When was the original test done? When were the samples taken?
Let's see, our harvest batch date here is 9/21/18.
Well, no, that's the decision date.
Yeah,
It says
no.
harvest batch 8/14/18, is
Yes,
that?
that's right.
the
So a
date?
few days after that test, so probably 6 days here.
Okay.
A few days after that harvest.
2 weeks, but I don't have the lab right.
No, sure. Okay, and so you've currently got that batch in segregated storage?
Absolutely, as per regulations.
Yeah. And how much sample did you send in for testing?
4 grams.
Okay. So you want to get another 4 grams to send in. Just how big is the harvest batch?
It's probably with trim and everything, it's 10 plus pounds. I don't have the exact gram weight in front of me.
Okay, and we heard some interesting comment this morning about aspergillus. I guess I'll lean on my colleague here to. I mean, this sort of plays to the testing regime.
Yeah, this aspergillus issue. This is something that the testing committee has brought up in a recent discussion. It is appearing that a black and white definition for the presence of a single aspergillus for an entire harvest or not can be problematic because as many in the scientific community have stated that aspergillus is ubiquitous. People that are immunocompromised to aspergillus inhalation probably shouldn't be smoking anything, or as a healthy individual could inhale some aspergillus spores and would probably be fine. As our regulations are written, it puts a lot of weight on ensuring that there aren't aspergillus spores in a harvest. But given the discussions that we're having with the testing committee and the available literature, I think that so long as the retest showed that there was not also aspergillus in that next sample, it could be reasonable to argue that the aspergillus is not infested throughout the entire harvest, but was indeed just on the particular piece of marijuana that was tested. Now, if that second retest failed, there's no way I could support retest and retest and retest until you find a piece that isn't. But if upon a second retest, if it's found to be clean, I think that was, probably just poor luck on the part of that particular harvest that it had an Aspergillus spore. So I would support a retest. And again, the testing work group is currently wrestling with an approach to the Aspergillus testing.
And just to volunteer, my client wouldn't be opposed to doing 2 tests, one per each 5 pounds, so that there's 2 tests that have to come clean.
And 1 to each lab. I mean, let's learn something from this. That's what I want. It's not a good system.
Yeah, and as I recall, even if it fails the Aspergillus test, it can be sold to a manufacturer, right?
Or with the director's approval.
Yeah, the director's approval, right. Okay. Okay, any other comments? Go ahead, Mr. Miller.
I would support doing a retest at 5-pound batches. That way we get a little more of a reading. So, sound good?
And Mr. Chair, for the board's information, Mr. Avo represents large cultivators on the testing committee. So some of the information from this could actually help the state as a whole.
Any other discussion? Okay, so is there a motion? Go ahead, Mr.
Chair, just to be clear, so it's I appreciated the director's reasoning that if you get one that says it's good and one that's bad, what do you do from there? So kind of moving forward, would that be acceptable? In other words, 2 more samples, the 2 out of 3 have to come out okay, and is there a desire to have, are there 2 labs here? So, okay, so we could do one in one lab and one at the other kind of thing? Might help.
That sounds reasonable.
Okay, is there a motion then?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would motion that Great Land Ganja be permitted to retest their marijuana so long as there is a split sample, and each sample is sent to a competing lab.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Miller. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of Great Land Ganja being approved to send out 2 samples, one from each of 5-pound harvest batch pieces, signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, that passes. Thank you very much. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't have my metric in front of me. If it's 11 pounds, what do you want me to do? I'm just saying.
I would hope that reason would prevail here.
Split into
common sense.
2 pieces, right? Okay.
And hopefully we will learn something from this. All right, it brings us to Juno's Green Garden, tab 33. I see you're not going anywhere.
Hi, Jan Weltine for Elizabeth Romanowski, who's on the phone. This is kind of an interesting issue, and I think...
Okay, let's let the director review the memo with us real fast.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tabs 33, 34, and 35 are all related. There is a difference between 33, so 34 and 35 are very similar, and then 33 is slightly different, but it's the same individuals involved, the same licensee, and this relates to the transfer issue that we spoke about during my report. So the issue, so ISG Inc. was a corporation that was owned 100% by a gentleman named Paul Burrows. He applied for 3 licenses, a standard marijuana cultivation, a retail store, and a product manufacturing facility. All 3 are in Juneau. 2, the cultivation and the product manufacturing are at the same address, whereas the retail store is in a different location. Since they were approved, the license has been issued for the cultivation facility, so it is in active pending inspection status, but the retail store and the product manufacturing facility are still in delegated status. Did I get that correct? I think that's correct.
Referred it to the director.
That is correct. So we have one where we consider the license, we have a date where it says the license was issued on this date by our office and will be given to the licensee once they pass an inspection. The other two remain in delegated status because the requirements of the delegation have not yet been satisfied. The ownership of ISG Inc. was transferred from Paul Burrows to Elizabeth Romanowski in early 2018. Paperwork signed on March 13th. The forms that are in the CBPL database online have two received stamps. One is March 16th, one is April 5th. I'm not sure that's relevant, but there are two. A license transfer application for each of these was initiated on March 14th. I think that's consistent for all three from my recollection, although I'm only looking at one memo. So 3 AAC 306045 states, a person may not receive or transfer a marijuana establishment license or a controlling interest in a marijuana establishment license issued to a partnership, including a limited partnership, a limited liability company, a corporation, or a local government without applying for and receiving the written consent of the board. So AMCO accepted all three transfer applications, and again, we're up against the issue of we accepted one for one that a license was issued, and two in a situation where the application was the applications are in delegated status. And upon reviewing them, we sent an incomplete letter to the applicant, who's the transferee, Ms. Romanowski, stating that the ownership of ISG Inc. needs to continue to be with Paul Burrows until such time as the board approves the ownership change. Mr. Burrows has refused to claim ownership of ISG Inc., and thus the application remains incomplete. This decision is being appealed, but we recommend denying the appeal because written consent of the board to transfer the controlling interest of the licensed entity, ISG Inc., has not been approved. This is consistent with AMCO has processed alcohol transfer applications. The ownership has to remain with the transferor until such time as it is approved by the board and effectuated based on any requirements the board places on the approval. So the applicant is appealing in each of these situations, and so then the secondary concern is, should we even accept transfer applications for licenses in delegated status? I'm not sure I put this in my memo, but I do see an issue of fairness in that, you know, the applications were submitted some time ago, they've been processed by staff. So while I would encourage the board to instruct us not to accept transfer applications in delegated status in the future, it seems fair that the board would certainly address this issue for these applicants.
So this was the first transfer application I did, and, you know, it was back in March of 2018, so it was really early on. And my understanding was, you know, if the license isn't operating, then it's much like an MJ-14 change where you change the premises, you know, often before the license gets operating, because you build a thing out and you realize it doesn't match your drawing and you need to change it. With this situation, we assumed because the license was not operating, there was no marijuana business, no flow of profit, nothing like that, that we could change the ownership and submit the application to the board. We didn't hear anything different until we got the incomplete letter. In the regulations, to Erica's point, the definition of number 21 under the 900 chapter, licensed, the definition of license means a holder of a current and valid license that the board has issued under this chapter. And, you know, the current valid license means the piece of paper that you get after the inspection, because that's your license date. So however you choose to move forward on whether or not you're going to accept transfers before the license actually gets active and operating is not real material. Well, it is material to this discussion, but I would hope that, you know, fairness and common sense would prevail that, you know, we have this situation. It was one of the earliest transfer applications. The licensee has been waiting for half a year, or the proposed licensee has been waiting for half a year to effectuate this transfer. And we would ask the board to move forward on the transfer and allow for the transfer. And if you want to make changes on how you accept applications and direct staff otherwise, that have prospective effect rather than retroactive effect.
there is strictly a business relationship between Mr. Burrows and Ms. Romanowski, or is it another?
So Miss Romanowski moved here from Arizona and picked up leases for facilities to lease it out to a marijuana company. Paul, Mr. Burrows, the current licensee, I guess, wasn't able to financially move forward, and I think he chose not to move forward. I don't want to speak for him. But at this point, I can understand why he doesn't want to take the shares back, because I asked Mr. Wells, hey, will you help us out and effectuate this change? And I can understand reasonably after a coordination has been out of his client's hands and controls for 6 months, you wouldn't want to take those shares back.
Okay, so she came up here
Back in 2015, I believe.
in the real estate marijuana.
Correct, yeah.
And had this, then Mr. Burrows decided to liquidate his license and his 2 applications.
I don't want to speak for Mr. Burrows. It appears that he did not want to move forward with the marijuana licenses, and so they made a business deal and arranged for the transfer.
Yeah. All right. Well, does anybody feel particularly Solomonic? I guess, can we look to our counsel and see if she has any suggestions, or just you shaking your head is perfectly lawyerly?
I'm afraid I can't help you out too much with this. I'm still stuck on the fact that the transfer was never approved by the board.
Yep. This is one that's going to probably require a little more deliberation than sitting here. I mean, the transfer wasn't approved, and we've got
the entities were never a licensed entity, and according to the definitions, a licensed entity, and this goes to Erica's point, means a current and valid license holder.
Right.
Which has been addressed in the regulations when the entity doesn't hold a current and valid license.
Then there can't be a transfer application. I mean,
well, that's what I'm saying.
It goes both ways.
That's what I'm saying. It goes to the director's point that if you want to not accept licenses that for transfer applications that you need to make that decision and apply it prospectively. The reality is here, you accepted this half a year ago, cashed the checks half a year ago, and now we're having the discussion.
Well, we cashed Mr. Burrows' checks.
No, you cashed Mrs. Romanowski.
Did we cash Mr. Romanowski's check?
Yes, we do accept fees before we'll begin looking at applications.
Okay.
I completely understand the director's logic here. I'm not disputing that she's right when it comes to the definitions here. It means that, unless you provide otherwise, transfers of licenses that aren't active and valid may not be contemplated in the regulations. But the fact that is the staff took the applications, cashed the checks, and processed these. And so if you want to change that, you need to change it prospectively, not negatively impact this client or licensee that's been in the queue.
Right. Yeah. Anybody on the board got any thoughts on this?
Maybe not on this specific instance, but I've known some licensees who were going through the process and building out, been approved and ran out of money, and then couldn't go get an investor or a partner because they couldn't do this transfer to add someone to the license. So, I'm kind of in favor of fixing it to where people could do this. Or do we need to fix it? Sounds like we don't. If I'm in favor of these things happening. Because you have someone get in and spend $1 million and they needed 1.5 and they're stuck. Right? They can't get their license, they can't get open, so they can't get that piece of paper, but yet they don't have an avenue to get that additional partner or investor. I don't know. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I've got a lot of I don't knows too. Let me ask counsel this. If we were to ask nicely, could we get some kind of an opinion on this particular issue here? And then we'd maybe have a special meeting, and perhaps that would not take too long. We do it on the phone and do this one.
I would be happy to do that. That would be some advice, wouldn't be an official opinion.
Yeah, but I think in this particular case, and we can talk about prospective changes till we're blue in the face and do something. But in this one, I think there are enough issues, pertinent issues here, lack of action by the board, that I think that we probably should get some advice and schedule this for a special meeting. And like I say, I don't think it would necessarily take that long once we've had a chance to digest.
And if I could remind the board, this isn't the first time you've seen these 3 applications, because you had it on the NOM agendas for it being not active. And I explained at that meeting that it was because the transfer was pending. So I'm not sure how we can punish this licensee.
Oh, I'm not talking about punishing. I want to make sure that we're making the right decision. And again, there's this space here where the transfer didn't take place, and we need to figure out whether we need to fill it, how we're going to fill it, because right now, things are kind of in limbo. The ownership of ISG is in limbo. As far as the ability to conduct the transfer. So it could be that we have to have some convoluted motion, but a legal convoluted motion, but convoluted motion nonetheless to make this happen. I don't think anybody's saying we don't want to make it happen, but you see what I'm saying? Okay. All right. Yes, sir.
I don't want to complicate this, but at Nome, my memory serves me correct, there were still some issues locally in Juneau because the conditional use permit was in process under one name, and there had to be some changes because of the way they were going to change the operation or the build out. And so there's some issues about the conditional use permit going through change. Have you gone through that process? Where are you with that process? Because at one point it sounded like Juneau was going to make you start all over, so I was just curious. So the conditional use permit for the retail has been approved by the Planning Commission. The conditional use permit for the cultivation and manufacturing, I believe they've been updated by the architect Wayne, I forget his last, Jensen, and he went, I believe he transferred the names, but we have to go back once this does get approved because the proposed new licensee wants to change the layout of the grow. And so you got that conditional use permit, and then if we allow the transfer, then you're going to have to do a change to the operating plan. Well, correct? That's correct. For the cultivation, yeah, we'd have to come back here and change it once, but I can't change anything until I have a licensee to sign stuff. And the conditional use permit is under Elizabeth's name as owner of ISG. And the manufacturing and the cultivation, I believe, have also been transferred over. But we're just kind of still waiting to make any of the other operational changes until I have a licensee that can actually stamp the paperwork.
Okay, then give us an opinion. Their motion to postpone to to the call of the chair to consider.
So motion.
Okay, is there a second? Second by Mr. Miller. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you very much. This brings us to, we're making progress. We're on page 7 of 15, which ain't too bad. Okay, hey, look at this. I see the N-word. New standard cultivation facilities. Alaska Fireweed Farm, license 10117. Line up and introduce yourself while we find your tab here. Okay, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Jason Harder, owner of Alaska Fireweed Farm.
Okay, Mr. Harder, is there a motion on license 10117?
Mr. Chair, motion to approve license number 10117 with delegation.
And is there a second? Second by Mr. Miller. Okay, Mr. Harder, welcome, and tell us who you are and what you got in mind.
Well, my name's Jason Harder, and I am applying for a standard cultivation facility.
Where at?
In Copper Center, Alaska.
Okay, so that's why you've got the petition here.
Yep, the unorganized borough.
Okay. You've got all your... How many signatures did you end up having to get?
I believe I needed 50%, so I got a little bit over that.
Yep. Okay, very good. Quick look at this here. What are you planning on growing for? The retail market, or manufacturing market, or both, or?
Retail market mainly.
Lost the okay, you on the property that's on?
I do.
Okay, no objections?
Yes.
Is there objections? I see the cover page, oh yeah, okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
I think all the objections were in 2016.
Correct.
Have you talked to the objectors?
I talked to the ones that live within the 1 mile premises that I needed to collect SIG. That both submitted pretty much the...
And are you satisfied their concerns?
They told me good luck either way it goes. I don't know that they're rooting for me, but...
Yeah. Okay, so, it was a little tiny picture of your, are you, try to get back here. You got neighbors nearby?
I do not.
You don't, okay, like I said, I'm having trouble getting this
My
picture.
property is along a river,
I can
pipeline
get it.
access, and a highway.
Okay.
And empty.
All right. You got cheap electricity?
No.
How good luck with that?
It's cheap in the summer when they go to hydro, but in the winter when we need it to be cheap, it's...
Sure. It'll be year-round operation.
Correct.
Okay. Sure. Okay, any board members got any questions or comments for Mr. Hard? Okay, we ready to vote? All right, on license 10117 with delegation, Mr. Ankerfeld?
Yes.
Mr. Emmett?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Okay. All right, next, Amy's Garden, LLC in Ketchikan. Are you here or are you there? Must be there when you go and turn the phone on.
The conference is no longer in listen-only mode.
Okay, Amy's Garden.
We're here.
In Ketchikan. Are you with us?
We're here.
Okay,
Hello?
very good. Go ahead and introduce yourself to us, and we'll find your tab here.
Hey, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
A motion to approve license number 15867 with delegation.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
There's a second by Mr. Miller. All right, very good. I am kind of guessing that Mr. Zantua out there?
Yep, that's me. I'm
Okay, go ahead and tell us who you are and what you want to do.
My name is Kanoe Zantua, and we want to do some cultivation, mostly for retail, but also for maybe manufacturing.
Oh, you're gonna be applying for manufacturer license?
No, we're not applying for manufacturing.
Oh, okay.
It just meant to sell to manufacturers. We do business with a couple manufacturers, and that's why I had said that. And we have a retail that we want to cultivate to sell for.
Okay. Is this building already in existence? Yeah, it looks like you're subdividing a building, huh?
Yeah, the building.
What's the other half of the building? What's in the other, the additional portion of the building that you're not gonna be?
The lower part of the building is it's all warehouse, pretty much.
Okay, and you're leasing that?
We're leasing the upstairs, and we're the only upstairs.
Okay, who's going to be working there? How many employees you planning on having?
Plan to have one, possibly two, and I would plan to be there as well.
Okay, and what kind of a grinder are you going to be using for your waste?
That I don't know for sure. I mean, we haven't purchased one yet, so we would be looking into something that could handle grinding up large plant material.
Okay. Are there any other members got any questions? Okay, and I was just reminded to see if there's comment from anybody else on the applications, and I apologize that we did not do that on the Houston license, but is there anybody who would like to testify on the Amy's Garden application on the phones? Okay, not hearing anybody for that. Are there any other questions for the applicant? Okay, not hearing any. On license 15867 with delegation, Mr. Ankerfeld.
Yes.
Mr. Emmett?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so there you go.
Thank you.
All right. 420 on Main, LLC.
Hello?
Yep.
Hello?
Hello, is this 420 on Main?
Yeah, it's Robert Bourne, 420 on Main.
Okay, very good.
Chair.
16446, go ahead.
Yeah, motion to approve license number 16446, delegation.
Okay, is there a second?
Second. And
Mr. Miller.
also conditions pursuant to 3 AAC 306.060.
Okay, very good. Go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us what you want to do.
Robert Bourne, I'm the sole owner of 420 on Main. You'll see the following application next month, I think, but we've put together an integrated program where we have retail. This is the small standard cultivation for our retail and perhaps marketing to other retail, and then also to our own manufacturing.
Okay, and you've got, okay, which of these other licenses have you got? You got the manufacturing license?
The manufacturing license was up for today, but some technicality we have been put back to next month. So far, we have the retail 15656. That was approved the month before last, and then we may have been on the phone just now talking about the parameters from the city, which are the zoning permit, the signage, and the so we do have the retail, and manufacturing will be next month. The full application is already in.
Okay, and you own the property.
That's correct.
All right. Any questions on this application?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. On the premises diagram, there's a document in here. I don't know what page it is, but it basically states in here that, find it again because it just went away. It says, as of October 18th, 2017, date of inspection, the building is in the process of being significantly renovated.
Sir, I know what you're...
3 of the 2-bedroom units have been or in the process. Anyway, it goes on to describe a lot of residential.
Okay, if I can just interrupt you. That was an appraisal that was done before we started this process, and it should not have been included on the bottom of that page. It was a miss. We just didn't catch it. We used that page from the past appraisal, so it does fill out some residences, but the number that they're talking about is not valid.
Well, there are still residents there.
Absolutely. That's been that's shown on diagram 5A, which gives you the elevation. It shows where the residents are on the second and third floor above the cannabis and laundromat commercial space down below.
Okay. I understand. I was trying to get to that point of clarifying whether or not that was true based on the diagram. On page 5 of 7 on the MJ04, it says odor. I believe it says that the outlet of the odor for the fans would be 15 feet above the roof. So are you taking the piping from the basement or the ground level up through the apartment structures to go above the roof to air out the odor? So the odor is actually going to be up through the residential, or?
No, there's the first part of that is the system that we're going to use for air is a contained system, so there should be very little discharge, if any. The way I understand it from the structural engineer and the mechanical engineers that we just went through this whole process. However, in terms of the actual exit, it currently was for a million BTU boiler, so that boiler's gone, but the thick stack is in the back, and it's about 6 feet north of the building. It's still connected to the existing decking. It'll be connected to the decking, but it holds its own. Basically, it's a 4x4 chimney that's insulated, and it goes up from the ground level beyond second, beyond third floor, another 15 feet. And it was always approved from the fire marshal and the building codes here that it's an exhaust for an old boiler, and from our engineers and our own observation, it appears to be a perfect stack for us. It will not go through any of the buildings. It will be, as I said, it's about 6 feet off of the wood frame of the second and third floor apartment.
But the actual exhaust end of that pipe will be closer to the residential than to your grow operation.
It will be 15 feet above the roof line that is at the north end of the building. Does include going past residential units yet.
So are you gonna be running an exhaust fan into that? I mean, that chimney would naturally draw the whole basement empty. So you're gonna have a set of fans in the.
There'll be a couple of things will be happening in the grow situation. The design of the from the structural engineer for the Essence AE Essence growing system, it's a contained air system, so there's very little to no discharge. There will be some, and that will be directed to that area. However, that area, when the manufacturing license comes up, there will also be a 6 times per day exchange of air for the manufacturing area, and that will all go up out that stack. So it'll be of concern, but it'll be of more concern for the manufacturing side.
And the chimney's on the end of the building the manufacturing will be on. Is that correct?
What's that again?
The chimney is on the end of the building that the manufacturing is on.
That's correct. We're taking that, what was basically a bomb-proof building for that big, huge diesel boiler, and retrofitting it to meet the code, fire marshal code, for the manufacturing area and the distillation extraction area, and that's then going to be connected straight to the stack that exists there. And it's a 1/4-inch steel, 10-inch diameter steel piping system that goes up.
Okay, are there any other questions for the applicant? Not seeing any. Okay, then on license 16446, 420 on Main, with delegation and City of Homer conditions pursuant to 3 AC 306.060B. We ready to vote? Mr. Ankerfeld?
Yes.
Mr. Emmett?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
And I'm yes, so there you go. That's a big doggone chimney you got there.
It was actually a 1.7 million BTU extractor, so we're not going to be anywhere near that capacity of melt.
How cold does it get in Homer? Okay, well, thanks very much.
No, it used to be a big laundry. It was a big old steam jacket laundry. So we're fortunate to now have natural gas.
Yeah, okay. All right, thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks for your time. Bye.
We take a 3-minute break. I need to talk to the attorney before we get to the next applicant.
Yes, we can take a short break.
The conference is now in listen-only mode.
Mr. Chair. I appreciate the break, and I talked to the attorney related to this application, and I would like to postpone it to tomorrow. A couple of questions that I raised, the attorney said she would need to review, and it has to do with some statements I found in the MJ00 form and the MJ05 that raised some concerns to me, and the attorney wanted to take the evening to look at that. So I'd like to just move this to the first thing tomorrow morning. That's acceptable.
Okay, so you're moving to,
Second.
okay, any objection to the motion? If not, then we will, postpone, Van Greens LLC to tomorrow morning. Brings us to, we're gonna take it up tomorrow morning. Just because the board member on reviewing the application has got some things he'd like some clarification from the attorney on, and, why, were you planning on leaving tonight? You're Van Greens? Okay, yeah, well, we're going to be taking this up first thing in the morning once the board member's got clarification from, our attorney on his questions. All right, which brings us to, new, limited cultivation licenses, applications. The fire supply, tab 40.
Jan Olstein, attorney for the fire supply, and Josh and Nick are on the line.
Mr. Chair, I would motion to approve license number 15015, the fire supply with delegation.
There's a second. Seconded by Mr. Miller. Ms. Wiltseen, go ahead and introduce your clients to us.
Joshua Boots and Nick Holbrook, and they are on the phone, and they're longtime Alaskans. Did you want to say hi to them?
They can say hi to us.
They're limited grows out in the valley. Pretty standard small operation. I'm not sure if they had anything else to add to that intro.
Hey, fellas out there, the phone's on.
The conference is no longer in listen-only mode.
Okay, fire supply.
Hello, this is Joshua. This is Nick.
All right.
Hello. Things are also telling me. Comedy theirs.
What is it?
Josh and Nick, we hear you. Everybody else, please mute your phone.
Okay, so, any questions from any board members on this application?
Just a couple, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
There is an unrelated business on the second floor, and it looks like the only access to that business is external stairs.
Correct.
And I had a question on odor going up to there, and secondly, in terms of your camera coverage, are you going to be recording everybody going up the stairs into that particular business?
So I'll let Nick elaborate on this more, but that's Holbrook Construction. So that's Nick. Nick is a general contractor. So that's his administrative office. So Nick, can you expand more on your odor control and the access of those stairs, and whether or not you're going to have a camera viewing the access up the stairs?
Sure, correct. Yeah, so we'll have that, obviously for my protection and whatnot, we'll have that under surveillance. And it will be very limited access. The odor control, what we designed, we have air scrubbers throughout the whole, all the areas where the marijuana would be stored and grown. So, the rooms are sealed quite efficiently. I shouldn't suspect any smells or odors going up into there. Hello, am I still on the line? I don't hear anybody.
You are. Thank you, Nick.
Okay.
Any other questions? No. Does anybody online want to comment on the application of the fire supply limited cultivation in Palmer? Hearing none. Are there any other questions, comments from board members on this application? Okay, then, for, fire supply 15015, with delegation, Mr. Axtelt.
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Jones.
Yes.
I'm a yes, so there you go.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Potter's Harvest LLC, license 16181.
Hi, Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
This is Lance Wells,
Yes, we
attorney.
can.
On behalf of Mr. J.C. Caldwell with Potter's Harvest, we're attending telephonically.
Okay, and was that your client who said, hi, can we hear him?
My name is J.C. Caldwell. I'm the sole owner of Potter's Harvest and worker. I'm specialized.
Okay, very good. Hold on one
in
second, so we get a motion
cannabis.
here.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. Yep. Motion to approve license number 16181, delegation.
Second. Second by Mr. Miller. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. On behalf of Mr. Caldwell, he's applying for a limited cultivation. He has grown up mostly in Alaska, spent 2 years in Montana as a young child, grew up in Barrow with his parents. He's living in the Matsu Valley in Wasilla. This limited cultivation is actually located in the family home in the garage. We've submitted the MJO2 so you can see the license set forth. He is a small craft cannabis cultivator is what he's looking to do. His father also works for head of security for TSA up on the North Slope, and he grew up for many years in Barrow. He's also a college student at UAA, attending his third year.
Hello. Okay. So we had some bad feedback there for a second. Okay, so Mr. Caldwell, you got anything to add to that?
No, sir.
Okay, are you the youngest one of the household? So it's a family home. Are there any kids living in there that you're going to have to keep out?
He has a younger sister. She is a teenager, and he lives with his mother and father. There's one door that accesses the cultivation from the house. As you can see on the MJO2, that door is locked and bolted, and he is the only one possessing a key to that entrance.
Okay, very good. And this is, what's this, the garage?
Sir, yes, sir.
Okay, and you're going to be the sole employee in there? You're going to be the everything?
Be the everything in there.
Okay, you majoring in horticulture, right? Or
Studying biological sciences, so parallels.
Oh, there you go. There's some research for you. Okay, any questions on this application? Any comments or concerns?
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Just briefly, on the MJO4 form, you spend an awful lot of time describing your packaging, storage of seeds, sorting, getting product ready to go to retail for sale without repackaging. But it's pretty unclear where all that will take place in your limited grow facility. Just looking at the diagram, you don't identify a lot of that storage area where you will keep things segregated while they're tested or whatever. So could you explain where in the premises you're going to do all of that particular work?
I'll be doing that particular work inside the room labeled dry cure packaging. I'll be doing the packaging in the dry cure room.
How big is that dry cure room? Because looking at the diagram, it didn't look very big.
It is 8 foot by 3 foot 6. Hello?
No, we heard you.
I was just commented that's a little less size than a jail cell, so I'm just curious.
Well, you'll have a big whiteboard in there for tracking everything, right?
Yes. And a computer.
Okay, and you're 21, right?
I'm 22, sir.
22, okay. All right. Making sure. All right, any other questions for Mr. Caldwell? Especially just got coffee delivered to them. Okay, all right, I guess we ready to vote? I guess we're ready to vote on license, 16181 Potter's Harvest LLC with delegation. Mr. Eckerbill?
Yes.
Mr. Emmett?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Absent coffee, I don't know how to vote. Yes.
And I'm a yes, so good luck to you there, young man.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much, and have a good day, all.
Okay, moves us on to, here. What did we say? They locked the front door, but we could maybe hold out a little after 5, could we?
It's my understanding that they lock the front door at 5, meaning nobody can come in, but I haven't been told that we have to be out by 5.
Won't set off any alarms going out.
No.
Okay, all right. Yeah, we'll just keep going, and actually, you know, we're gonna start getting into transfers and other stuff, so tomorrow might not be as bad as it looks. Might not do any regulations, but, you know. Okay. Alaskan Dream LLC, license 16276.
Mr. Chair, motion to approve.
You guys look like you're dreaming. Introduce yourselves to us and tell us what you'd like to do.
Tim Davis, limited cultivation co-owner for Alaskan Dream. My name is Anthony Olivieri. I'm working with Alaskan Dream LLC.
Okay, I'm sorry. What was your name again? Timothy. Okay, I got you here. I was looking for the list here. I said, no, he didn't say shell. Okay, so you're one of the owners. All right, very good. And so what do you guys got in mind?
Seeking license approval with delegation from local fire marshal.
Okay, but I mean in terms of your operation. What do you got in mind?
New application.
I think the chair kind of wants to know about how you plan to go forward. Can you explain to us just a little bit about yourselves or about your operation or something that's going to let the board know that you are serious about this, that you can pull it off? So just something, you know.
It's going to be a limited cultivation facility located in Big Lake. This is a 40-acre property in which, in the center of the property, is a 13-square-foot shop. This was a concrete countertop shop that has been being remodeled, waiting for approval, obviously, but so it is going to be 496-square-foot canopy. About a third of that is going to be vegetative growth. Roughly 2 to 3 months. During that period, the plants will be transferred over to the flower phase in compliance with all state law, you know, metrics, tracking included.
Okay, and what kind of a market are you going to be for?
More of a craft, connoisseur type market, so only a limited.
Okay, you've got some strains in mind already.
Blue Dream being one of them.
Okay, and how many of you are going to be working in there?
3 to 5 of us. Me, myself and Torchell is one of those five.
All right, and Mr. Shell owns the property, is that right? Or owns the property here?
Yes, him and Terry Anchel both own the property and all the buildings on that property.
Okay. All right, there any other questions for the applicant?
Sure.
Yes, sir.
A couple. As you stated, this is what, 12, 1,300 square foot facility, but you're keeping it at a limited?
1,300.
Okay, 1,300.
Not 1,000.
Okay. But you're keeping this at a limited, which is under 5.
Correct.
Is there any reason why you didn't go for a standard, even though you might only be cultivating less than 500 now, but you could bump it up by 100 if you get terribly successful without going back to a process of going forward? It seems to me that you could let that canopy just by accident get over that if you were inspected. That's just a concern that I have, and I was wondering if you could respond.
Yes. Upon inspection of the market, the owners decided that it was not a wise decision to invest in a standard facility. They wanted to start out with a limited and see how it went. The canopy space is clearly defined in the MJ04. These are going to be on tables, and the tables will have scrog type netting to help contain them and conform them to the canopy that is displayed there in the MJ04.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
I don't want to interpret too much into what you said, but you said something about the owners didn't want to do that. You two aren't the owners?
I'm co-owner, but we didn't feel that, the amount of space we have, with how the market's going now, might go into the amount of space. We have our other half of our space, our units that we have the ability to grow if we need to, add them in the future.
Okay. And then on the MJ01 form on page 12 of 19, you talk about an in-house waste tracking system, and you also talk about our personal records when you're talking about recording waste. Are you talking about metric? Are you talking about something different?
This is something above and beyond metric. Metric only tracks waste harvested or recorded per harvest batch and also by room. This in-house system is kind of a logbook that they will keep on track just for their personal records on top and above and beyond metric.
Better to log it.
And they or whom?
You guys planning on doing your own transportation? Going to have somebody transport for you?
We will most likely do our own transportation.
Mr. Oliver, you're the grower. Is that what you are here?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, kind of. Who designed the cultivation system?
That was me and Mr. George Show.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, not hearing any, I guess we'll vote. Mr. Eichenfeld?
Yes.
Mr. Brennan?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
No.
Okay, and I'm voting yes, so there you go.
Good luck, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, which brings us up to, what the heck's going on here? This is our RCJ Legacy LLC. I don't know what it is. Tab 43.
The conference is no longer in listen-only mode.
Okay, is Jolyn Jolson online?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Hang on 1 second there.
Hey, Mr. Chair, I'd motion to approve license number 16791 RJC Legacy LLC with delegation.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, moved and seconded. Mr. Miller. Okay, Miss Jolson, go ahead and introduce yourself to us and tell us what you have in mind.
My name is Jolene Gilson, and my husband and I, Robert, are planning a limited cultivation in Big Lake, Alaska to supply our retail store, The Green Spot.
Okay, and your retail is in operation?
Yes, sir.
Okay, is this a different building from the retail?
No, it's located in the same building.
Okay, all right, gotcha. Okay, any questions here for the applicant?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
On the premises diagram, I don't know which one, about halfway down, it shows Bob's Mini Market Convenience Store, looks like on the right, and then it talks about an empty unit, and then it talks about the Green Spot, and then there's cloning, vegetation, processing. So basically, the limited cultivation is in back of the retail store, and it looks like it shares part of that building with Bob's Mini Mart. Can you explain the separation between those? Because in the back, it looks like there's a connection.
There is no connection. The north end of the building is completely closed off, Bob's Mini Market. The north end is behind the empty units, and the retail store is the cultivation. But there's a separating wall. There's a boiler room that it looks like there's a connection, but there's a wall between that processing and that spot. Looks like it's the boiler, the cold water heater or whatnot. So there's a wall there.
So that boiler heats the building, and it's only accessible through Bob's Mini Mart?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Are there any other questions for the applicant? Okay, not hearing any. For RCJ Legacy LLC, license 16791 with delegation, Mr. Ankerfeld.
Yes.
Mr. Emmett.
Yes.
Mr. Jones.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Miller.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So there you go. Moves us along to Dutch Buds Cannabis Company.
Thank you.
Good. You're very welcome. The Dutch Buds Cannabis Company, Mark Bailey. Are you online?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hey, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
The motion to approve license number 16916, Dutch Buds Cannabis Company with delegation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Bailey, welcome, and introduce yourself and tell us what you got in mind.
Thank you, members of the board this afternoon and AMCO staff. My name is Mark Bailey. I am looking to start up a limited marijuana cultivation here in the Mat-Su Valley. I am focusing on smaller craft and building a brand, and down the road I eventually want to open up a standard, but that's 5 years down the road. But short term, I want to focus on quality and a good brand.
Okay, very good. Try to navigate through the files here real quick.
Yeah. I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
This is on your residential property?
Yes.
Okay. So the building already exists?
Yes.
The neighbors have to say they happy to see it?
I've had no issues.
Hey, you got any kids in the house you gotta keep out of there?
Nope, no kids. and probably not going to have any for a few years at least.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sure.
I would just like to comment that the application better be pretty perfect because Mr. Bailey is a former AMCO licensing examiner.
Well, then, everybody heard that. You know which one to steal from. An old grant-writing trick. I shouldn't have said that. Yeah, okay, well, that might explain why your name sounds familiar, Mr. Bailey. Okay.
Yeah, you've probably seen my email blow up.
Yeah. And then Sarah had to look around and said, "What's that? I got to crane my neck because she's sitting up on the podium." All right. Okay, very good. No more questions or comments for the applicant. Then for license 16916 with delegation, Mr. Ankerfeld. Yes. Mr. Mr. Miller. Yeah. Mr. Jones. And I'm a yes. So there you go. Grow some of them Dutch buds.
Thank you very much.
Okay, that brings us up to new retail stores. There's only 3 of them, so let's get through these 3 for sure. The first one is license 10686 Kernigan Herb Company. Kernigan Herb Company online.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon.
Okay, right on. Anybody who is not Kernigan Herb Company, can you please mute your phone? Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair. Excuse me, motion to approve number 10686. Delegation.
Mr. Emmett, this one has a protest by the municipality of Anchorage, so this should be uphold the protest within a banned period.
So I'll retract that motion. The motion would be to hold the protest on license number 10686 with a 120-day abeyance.
Is there a second? Mr. Miller. Okay, folks, if you're not Kernigan Herb Company, please mute your phone. We're getting some feedback in there. Some hurts my ears. All right. Mr. Molan, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us what you're up to.
Good afternoon. Yes, my name is Seth Mullen. I'm the president of the Kernigan Herb Company. We're looking to open up our retail establishment in Girdwood. And forgive me, before you introduced me, it sounded like you referenced some sort of protest against us. There's a lot of feedback on it.
Yeah, somebody's got to turn their phone off. We're getting, I don't know, there's TV in the background, but it's pretty horrendous. Otherwise, we'll just hang up the bridge and call it back. Okay, that's a little quieter, I think. Go ahead, Mr. Mullen.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. Before you introduced me, it sounded like you guys were referencing some sort of protest against us. Is this the case?
Yeah, it's a municipal land use protest. And,
I see.
Yeah, and so what the motion is to uphold the protest, which we're required to do, with a 120-day abeyance period, which gives you and the city 120 days to shake it out and then come back and say everything's good.
Right, no, that's understood, yes.
All right, so have you got, do you hold another license? No, okay, you're just a retail, right?
This license is for retail, yes. We currently hold a manufacturing license in the city of Anchorage, and we've also got a standard cultivation license pending, or pending inspection.
Okay. And I don't really know Girdwood's kind of out of my league. There's another retail out in Girdwood, isn't there?
There is, yes.
Okay, yeah.
Currently inactive.
Okay, and how far along are you in getting ready to go besides needing to get this land use permit whipped out?
Well, we've had an MOU in place with the Girdwood Board of Supervisors, the GBOS, and actually we were at the GBOS meeting last night and updated that memorandum of understanding with them, and we're ready to begin construction.
Okay, so, all right. Are there any questions as we go along here for the applicant? Okay, so you're on bare ground right now.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay, so you're leasing it to yourself.
Correct.
All right. And what's the MOA with the Turnigan, what do you call them?
Mr. Chair, the municipality of Anchorage requires a neighborhood compatibility plan with the community council, and in Girdwood, the Girdwood Board of Supervisors is the community council.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so are you anticipating any? You're aware of the land use permit issue, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you going to have that resolved here pretty quick, you think?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and as soon as that's squared away, when do you think you'd be starting construction?
As fast as we could get the trucks on site.
Okay, and all right. Just don't necessarily want to be talking to you a year from now saying what's going on. Municipality of Anchorage, you never know. Okay. Are you going to be selling pretty much your own products?
Yes, sir, and as well as others.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Any other questions of the applicant? Okay. Not hearing any questions. Then for Turning Herb 10686. Mr. Ankerfeld.
Yes.
Mr. Emmett.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Jones.
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so there you go. We'll hopefully hear some good news from you in 120 days.
Looking forward to it, sir. Thank you very much.
You bet. Okay, Mason Jar, LLC in Juneau.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good.
Chair?
Yep.
Yes. Motion to approve license number 13279, the Mason Jar LLC for delegation.
There's a second. Second by Mr. Miller. Okay, let's see what we're talking to here. Mr. Levine. Go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us what you're all about.
Dennis Levine. I live here in Juneau, Alaska. I've been an Alaska resident for 13 years. Also own another construction company here. Been in business since 2005 and getting excited to get into the new industry.
All right, whereabouts in Juneau is this?
We are located at 2771 Sherwood Lane, Unit E.
What part of Juneau is that?
Would be the valley.
It's across the street from DMV, from the state.
Yes, sir.
And right by the fire department's training facility.
Well, high security neighborhood.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, you'll be assured of quality customers.
That's right.
Okay. where you gonna be buying off of the cultivators, Southeast cultivators, or?
Yes, yeah, we're gonna start with that and see where it brings us.
All right, any, questions or comments? Mr. Jones, your neck of the woods? Okay, so you're leasing it from,
Dan Miller?
okay, you're all good with the CBJ?
Yes, sir.
Okay, any other questions or comments for the applicant? Okay, don't see any. All right, I guess ready to vote on license 13279, the Mason Jar. Mr. Ankerbill?
Yes.
Mr. Emmett?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so there you go.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You guys have a great day.
Oh, yeah, you too. All right, Good Buds LLC, license 16529, out of Seward. Okay, is Good Buds LLC online with us?
Yes, sir. This is Jared Wallace, co-owner.
Okay, very good, Mr. Wallace, hold on just a second.
And Mr. Chair, motion to approve license number 16529, Good Buds LLC with delegation and KPB conditions.
Is Seward in the borough? Seward's in the borough? Okay, all right. Okay.
Here on the
agenda
at least.
Okay. All right, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so, Mr. Wallace, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us, what you're gonna be doing down there in Seward.
Yeah. So once again, Jared Wallace, representing on behalf of Good Buds with Toccoa Wallace, my brother, and Charles Spalding, best friend. We all grew up here in Seward, born and raised in Alaska. Me and my brother Toccoa currently have a towing business here out of Seward. I myself also have a liquor store in Seward, Sacktown, which is in the same building as the proposed premise. And then Charles Spalding has a dental, he's a dentist and has a dental operation in Anchorage. Lifelong residents and want to establish a good business down here that also brings in year-round income. As you know, Seward's a fishing community for the most part, and a lot of the seasonal work leaves in the winter, and the economy kind of takes a little dive. So we're hoping to bring some jobs here and get into the industry.
Okay, and did you say the liquor store is in the same building?
Correct. It's in the same building, but not the same premise.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
On that note, that came to our attention after staff had already determined the application to be complete. So at the end of last week, we told the applicant that he needed to designate a suite number to this premises address. He already has a suite number designated for his liquor license, which is Suite 1, and so he has since added Suite 2 to this premises address and has submitted a revised lease, which is, I believe, included in your packet to reflect that.
Okay, let's try to remember about, isn't there a regulation about the proximity of a liquor license to a marijuana license?
They can't have the same premises, they can't share premises, but there's no separation distance, and there's nothing that disallows them from being similar units in some sort of business condo. I have a question for the applicant, if that's okay. Mr. Wallace, is this building one story or more than one story?
No, there is multiple stories. The business section of or the commercial side of it, I guess, is the lower section. And then the unit above the liquor store right now, that is actually where the owners and landlords of the buildings, they own the building next to it as well, live.
So, Mr. Chair, I would recommend that your delegation improve or include a revised diagram number 5, which requires a diagram of the entire building. We don't appear to have a diagram of this other story.
Sure. And just a question on the suite number, is that something that has to be approved by the Sewer Planning Commission, or can you do that as the owner of the building? Because I mean, I would wonder if that would, I don't know what the rules are in Sitka for street numbers, you know, Seward.
Yeah. Seward, yeah. You're asking myself, correct, Jared?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So to comment on that, it's a little undefined in our location. We are actually not within the Seward city limits. We're in the Kenai Peninsula Borough. So the borough has jurisdiction over this. At the time that we submitted the initial application, there was no defined suite numbers. I was the only tenant within the building. And then obviously we're going to be the second tenant within the building. And so it has been defined since then, and this is just a recent thing that it's been defined, and that's been with the borough defining Suite 1 and Suite 2.
Okay, very good. Where's the liquor store doesn't show on this diagram. It says legal possession licensed premises.
Okay.
It says property owner office space, and it says unleased open rental space. So where does the liquor store play in here? Or is that down here in the corner?
It's going to be on the northwest corner of the building. It's roughly 1,000 square feet, 900 square feet, somewhere right in there. Let me pull up my diagram here.
It's labeled Backtown, bottom left corner.
Yeah. Correct. As you're looking at the application, or the diagram 2, in the left corner of that building is the liquor store. And then in the middle of the building, there's utility, and then towards the back of the building is the landlord's office space.
Okay, yeah, I got it. How long have you had the liquor store?
About 2 years I've been operating now.
All right, and you don't anticipate much loiterage problem for the marijuana store in relationship to the liquor store?
I missed the first part of that. Can you say that again?
I said you're not anticipating much of a loitering problem there. I don't know what kind of trade you get at the liquor store.
No, that's definitely an issue that we're not taking lightly as far as loitering. There used to be benches that were located outside of the building, to sit down on a nice day, but they've been removed. The landlords have really been helpful with their, we don't want people loitering. We don't, obviously no on-site compremise, no the rest of the acreage of his land, no on-site consumption, that kind of stuff. So we have a really strict no loitering policy, and we'll fully implement.
Okay, and I will say that I think this is the first license that we've considered that's next door to a liquor store, I think. Maybe I'm wrong. People are shaking their head. I get too old.
Great, making history.
But
Ms. Oates is shaking her head. I think that's not the case.
Okay, no, all right. Okay,
that's not the case.
Okay, then.
One of the marijuana shops in Juneau is in between the Triangle
and
the Imperial.
Right. Yes,
and you've visited there, both the bars and the other
That's right. No, I've never been to the Triangle Club, have I?
No. Here's some repeating history.
Oh, man.
Mr. Chair, could I ask a question?
Yes, go right ahead.
On the MJ03 form, on page 2 of 6, section 2.1, under item number 2, it says, sold marijuana will be carried by the customer through the same door in which they entered. The sold product will either be in a non-labeled opaque bag, or if the customer chooses, in their pocket, purse, or own bag. And then further on down, it says the containers will be large enough to defer if they also a small rubber cap. After the customer has decided on what they want to purchase, an employee will retrieve this product from behind the counter. Once paid for, the customer will be asked if they want a bag. If they decline, they will be instructed that the product cannot be seen when leaving the store. Those statements are in direct conflict with 306-345-A3, which says that it'll all be packaged in an opaque, resealable, child-resistant packaging when the purchaser leaves the retail unit. So that whole section should be part of the delegation and needs to be completely rewritten per our regulations.
Okay. Thank you for that comment. To comment on that, I see where the wording can get a little unclear. We're not talking about the initial tamper-resistant packaging, child-resistant packaging that the product will have with the proper labeling, the warning labels, you know, the store number, etc. We're talking about like a brown paper bag. Once they leave the store, it goes inside that bag so that upon leaving the store, it's not advertised. So inside of that brown paper bag would be obviously the tamper-resistant correct containers with the proper labeling on it.
I understand your explanation, but that's not how it reads and that's not how it's written. So I'm just asking that part of the delegation that be completely redone.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the first time, thanks, Mr. Jones, this is the first time that anybody has suggested that there's an option for packaging concealment. So,
and then also, Mr. Chair, on the same section, MJ03, the 4 of 6, when the section I just read to you, it sort of implied that people could pick samples and then would get packaged. But on page 4 of 6, it talks about no on-the-spot amounts or weights where an employee would have to measure or weigh. It sounds to me that contradicts what you said above, that you might have some deli-style stuff, and then here you talk about no employee will have to weigh, and that seemed to be in contradiction to the deli style. So I would include some clarification on that so that staff is clear about exactly what you're processing and how you're going to sell it.
Okay. Definitely. I can that can be revisited and we can clarify on making sure that it's correctly worded. Obviously, at the time, this moment, there will be no on-the-spot weighing. So when I say they can pick their product, I don't mean they can pick an unweighed amount. It can be, there's already 10 items that are weighed out and packaged correctly. They can pick between those 10 items. They can't pick bulk item and then us weigh it on the spot. It'll already be prepackaged and pre-labeled according to the standards and the regulation. But we can better word this so it reads that way.
Good with that, Mr. Jones? Okay, any other questions, comments on this? So we know what the delegation is. It's the exit packaging and clarification on the selling, well, and the diagram, yes. Okay, all right. So for license 16529 Good Buds LLC, Mr. Ackerfeld.
Yes.
Mr. Emmett. Yes. Mr. Miller? Yes. Mr. Jones?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so there you go. All right, it's, about 10 after 5.
Mr. Chair, earlier Mr. Jones asked me to look at the applicant on tab number 39. He had some specific questions, and I note that the individuals involved appear to be here. I've had a chance to look at that. I can't say that I have any particular clarity because I'm not certain what Mr. Jones was looking at specifically, but I would just suggest that since the folks are here, you might want to hear from them, and that might help me to understand what the issue is.
Okay, we'll turn the phones on, and we will go...
The conference is now in listen-only mode.
Van Greens LLC. That's license number 16738.
Sure. Are you asking for a motion
to
approve this and discuss those licenses?
Yes.
Okay. Well, then I motion to approve license number 16738, Van Greens LLC with delegation.
Okay, is there a second? All right. Go ahead and introduce yourself to us.
Yeah, hi, I'm Eric Van Veen from Sitka. We have a standard cultivation setup. We'll be employing about 7 people off the bat, and about it.
Okay, Mr. Jones.
Thank you. First major question I had was on the MJ00 form, page 103. You state your name and owner, and then in the box, do you currently have any other licenses? And you state number 10066 and number 10067, and then you state, I gave money to Aaron Bean before and after the application was submitted and never got put on the license. It's also my understanding that just before the municipal elections, Aaron Bean was either suing or being sued by another marijuana business who also were politicians. And I think Aaron Bean owns a license. So I was trying to figure out whether or not you were an owner of another license that wasn't on here, or is Aaron Bean part of one of these licenses? I didn't quite understand how you could give money and not be on a license, and not be in violation of our rules.
In the beginning, when we first started this whole thing, it was a 50-50 ownership, and we brought in another shareholder doing a litigation with her. He's currently in court. I gave him money before we submitted our applications for the grow and the retail, and for some reason I didn't get put on the license, and so I proceeded to start another company.
Mr. Chair, if I may, the specific question I had following my brief conversation with Mr. Jones was, does Mr. Van Veen, where does he fit in the lawsuit against that other marijuana business owner? It's my understanding, based on the limited information I have, that lawsuit is brought by Valerie and Connor Nelson, and I didn't know that Mr. Van Veen was involved. I don't have those facts.
No, and that's why, Aaron Bean was part of that lawsuit, and this statement in here was that this applicant, Eric Van Veen, had given money to him, and I wasn't sure if that meant he was part of that license because he had a financial interest in that license, but it wasn't recorded, and that was an issue for me, and that's why I wanted to ask the question. And I guess staff would have to tell me if he shows up on somebody else's license or not, and if he still considered himself to have a financial interest.
Through the chair, Mr. Jones, I do not believe Mr. Van Veen is on license 10066 or 10067. This could be an allegation of undisclosed financial interest. It's sort of, the board has taken the position that if money is loaned with no expectation of profit sharing, that's an acceptable situation, whereas if money is loaned with some sort of agreement to receive profits from the business, then that is undisclosed financial interest. So we can certainly investigate this, and but I think the question of whether it relates to our regulations would depend on the agreement that Mr. Van Veen and Mr. Bean had. If it doesn't qualify as an undisclosed financial interest under our regulations, then I think it would be a civil matter between those two gentlemen.